What would you do if a rich woman publicly humiliated an old janitor she thought was worthless, only to discover he was the man who built the entire company from nothing? Before we begin, comment your city and what time it is right now, because this story starts with disrespect in front of an entire office building. But minutes later, the same people laughing at an old janitor would stand frozen in complete silence. It happened inside one of the biggest corporate towers in the city. Expensive suits, luxury offices, powerful executives everywhere. And in the middle of it all, an elderly black janitor quietly cleaning floors while people walked past him like he didn't exist. Until one rich woman decided to humiliate him publicly. The glass tower stretched high above the city streets, reflecting the bright morning sunlight across rows of expensive cars parked outside the massive corporate building. Inside, the lobby looked more like a luxury hotel than an office. Polished marble floors reflected golden chandelier light, while giant digital screens displayed company profits, stock prices, and promotional videos celebrating the corporation's success. Employees moved quickly through the lobby, carrying laptops and coffee cups, dressed in expensive suits and designer shoes, while discussing meetings, investors, deadlines, and million-dollar deals. Everything about the building screamed money, status, and power. Near the elevators, an elderly black janitor slowly pushed a cleaning cart across the marble floor. He looked somewhere in his 70s now, tall but slightly bent with age, wearing a simple gray maintenance uniform with a faded name patch stitched onto the chest. His movements were calm and careful as he wiped fingerprints from glass railings and quietly polished the floors while employees walked around him without even making eye contact. Most people barely noticed him anymore. To them, he was simply part of the building itself, invisible. But despite his age and simple appearance, there was something dignified about the old man. The way he carried himself, the calmness in his face, the quiet confidence in his eyes. He worked slowly but precisely, like someone who took pride in every detail, no matter who noticed. Then the lobby doors opened sharply. A wealthy woman stepped inside wearing an expensive cream-colored business suit, high heels clicking loudly across the marble floor, while two younger executives hurried behind her carrying folders and tablets. She moved through the building like she owned every inch of it, confident, loud, entitled. Employees immediately stepped aside as she passed, while receptionists greeted her nervously. Her name was Victoria Langford, one of the company's most powerful investors and newest board members, and she expected everyone in the building to know it. As she approached the elevator area, the elderly janitor carefully moved his cleaning cart slightly to make space for people walking by. But one wheel caught briefly against the edge of the marble floor, causing the cart to shift suddenly. A small amount of water splashed lightly near Victoria's expensive heels. She stopped instantly, slowly looked down at the water, then toward the old janitor, and immediately her expression changed. The entire lobby seemed to slow down for a moment after Victoria stopped near the cleaning cart. Employees nearby immediately sensed tension building and quietly turned their attention toward the scene while pretending not to stare openly. The elderly janitor looked down at the small splash of water near her shoes and quickly reached for a towel from his cart. "I apologize, ma'am," he said calmly. "I'll clean that right away." But Victoria stepped backward sharply, like the water itself offended her. "Are you serious?" she snapped loudly enough for half the lobby to hear. The janitor remained calm. "It was an accident." Victoria laughed once under her breath while looking around at the nearby employees. "This is exactly the problem with this company," she muttered. Several younger executives standing nearby lowered their eyes awkwardly, while the old man quietly knelt to wipe the floor near her shoes. "Look at this," Victoria continued loudly. "People spend millions to maintain a professional environment, and somehow we still can't hire competent staff." The words landed heavily across the marble lobby. The janitor paused briefly while holding the towel in his hand, but said nothing. Nearby employees exchanged uncomfortable looks, while receptionists behind the front desk pretended to stay focused on computer screens. Victoria looked down at the old man kneeling near her shoes. "How long have you even worked here?" she asked sharply. "Long enough to know people usually show respect to others," the janitor replied quietly. The sentence immediately changed the atmosphere around them. Several employees nearby looked up after hearing it. Victoria's expression hardened instantly. "Excuse me?" The old man slowly stood again, calm as ever. "I said I apologize for the accident." Victoria crossed her arms tightly. "No, you decided to get smart with me." The janitor looked at her calmly for several seconds. "No, ma'am. I decided to remain respectful." The nearby executives visibly tensed now, because they could already feel the situation escalating beyond something small. But Victoria's pride had already taken over, and standing in the center of the luxury lobby, surrounded by employees and investors, she decided she wanted to humiliate him publicly. Victoria stepped closer toward the elderly janitor, her heels striking sharply against the marble floor, while the entire lobby quietly watched. "You know what your problem is?" she asked loudly. "People in your position forget their place." Silence spread immediately around the elevators. The janitor remained standing calmly beside the cleaning cart, one hand resting lightly against the handle, while employees nearby froze awkwardly between watching and pretending not to watch. "My place?" the old man repeated softly. Victoria nodded sharply. "You mop floors. That's your job. So maybe focus on that instead of trying to lecture people above you." Several younger employees near the elevators visibly reacted after hearing the sentence. One receptionist looked genuinely uncomfortable now, while another executive quietly shifted farther away from the confrontation. But nobody stepped in. Nobody challenged her. Because Victoria Langford held power inside that building, and everyone knew it. The old janitor slowly looked around the lobby for a moment, before returning his eyes toward her. "Interesting," he said quietly. Victoria frowned immediately. "What's interesting?" The old man gave a small, tired smile. "How quickly people decide someone's value based on their uniform." The sentence landed hard in the silence around them. Victoria laughed openly this time. "Value," she repeated. "You push a cleaning cart around all day." Nearby employees lowered their eyes awkwardly after hearing that. The old man remained calm somehow through all of it. No anger, no embarrassment, just quiet dignity. And somehow, that calmness made Victoria even more irritated. "You should be grateful you even have a job here," she continued loudly. "People like me are the reason this company survives." The janitor looked directly at her for several long seconds, then quietly asked, "Do you really believe that?" Victoria smirked confidently. "I know it." Around them, the tension had become impossible to ignore now. Conversations throughout the lobby had nearly stopped completely, while employees openly listened from different corners of the building. The old man slowly adjusted the sleeve of his maintenance uniform before calmly saying, "That's the dangerous thing about power." Victoria crossed her arms again. "And what would you know about power?" The old man looked at her quietly. "More than you think." The answer irritated her immediately. "Unbelievable," she muttered, before turning toward the nearby executives.
Why is this man even still employed here? Nobody answered. Because deep down, something about the old janitor's calmness felt different now. Like he wasn't intimidated by her status at all, and that made the entire lobby uneasy. Victoria's patience disappeared completely now that the entire lobby was watching. She pointed sharply toward the elderly janitor while speaking to the younger executives standing behind her. "I want him removed from this lobby immediately," she snapped. "This company cannot afford employees who disrespect leadership." The executives exchanged nervous looks, but nobody moved. The old janitor simply stood beside his cleaning cart calmly, almost sadly, while the marble lobby remained frozen around them. "Ma'am," one younger executive said carefully, "perhaps this situation is being misunderstood." "Misunderstood," Victoria interrupted sharply. "I'm standing here being insulted by maintenance staff in front of employees and investors." The janitor quietly shook his head. "I never insulted you." Victoria laughed sarcastically. "No? Then maybe you should explain your attitude." The old man looked around the lobby slowly, his eyes moving across the expensive floors, glass railings, giant company logos hanging from the walls. Then back toward Victoria. "I've spent most of my life inside this building," he said softly. "And I learned something a long time ago." Victoria crossed her arms impatiently. "Which is?" The old man met her eyes calmly.
A company reveals its true character by how it treats the people nobody notices. Silence spread heavily through the lobby after that sentence. Several employees visibly reacted, while even the executives standing beside Victoria looked uncomfortable now. But Victoria's pride had already gone too far to stop. "Security," she said sharply toward the front desk. "Escort him out." Nearby receptionists froze immediately after hearing the order. The old janitor remained calm, quietly placing the cleaning towel back onto the cart, while several security guards near the entrance began moving uncertainly toward the lobby. And standing beneath the giant company logo surrounded by expensive suits and silent employees, the elderly janitor looked less like a worker being removed and more like someone watching a painful mistake unfold in real time. Just as the security guards approached the elevator area, the private executive elevator at the far end of the lobby suddenly opened. Several senior board members stepped out quickly while speaking about morning meetings and investor reports. But the moment one older board member looked toward the confrontation near the cleaning cart, he froze completely. "Harold?" he said in shock. The entire lobby fell silent again. Victoria frowned immediately, while the old janitor slowly turned toward the voice. The board member's face changed instantly after seeing the security guards surrounding him. "What is going on here?" he demanded sharply. Nobody answered immediately. Victoria stepped forward confidently. "This employee has been causing problems in the lobby." The board member stared at her in disbelief before looking back toward the old janitor again. "Employee?" he repeated quietly. Then he looked around at the confused executives and security staff standing nearby. "Do any of you know who this man is?" Silence. Complete silence. Victoria crossed her arms impatiently. "He's a janitor." The board member slowly shook his head. "No," he said softly. "He's Harold Bennett." He paused for several seconds before finishing the sentence. "The man who built this company." The words hit the lobby like an explosion without sound. Employees froze. Security guards immediately stepped backward. Victoria's face lost color instantly, while nearby receptionists stared openly in shock. The old janitor, Harold Bennett, calmly lowered his eyes for a brief moment, while the entire building suddenly realized the man pushing the cleaning cart wasn't simply maintenance staff. He was the founder of the corporation itself. Nobody in the lobby moved after hearing Harold Bennett's name. The silence became almost unbearable beneath the soft hum of elevator motors and distant office noise echoing through the building. Victoria stood completely frozen near the marble floor she had just humiliated him on moments earlier. Her confident posture disappeared instantly, replaced by visible panic spreading across her face. Nearby employees openly stared now, while whispers immediately spread through the lobby. "That's Harold Bennett? The founder? Oh my God." One older employee near the reception desk slowly covered her mouth, while another executive visibly stepped backward in disbelief. The board member looked furious. "This man built the company from a single office 45 years ago," he said sharply. "Every person standing in this lobby works because of him." Security guards immediately lowered their eyes, while the younger executives beside Victoria looked deeply uncomfortable now. Harold Bennett calmly adjusted the sleeve of his old maintenance uniform and looked around the lobby quietly. "I like spending time here," he said softly. "It reminds me what the company really feels like when nobody knows who's watching." The sentence landed heavily across the building, because suddenly everyone understood why the founder dressed like a janitor and quietly cleaned floors. He wanted to see how employees treated people without power. And what he saw this morning exposed the company completely. Victoria finally found her voice. "Mr. Bennett, I didn't realize—" Harold looked directly at her. "Exactly," he said quietly. "You didn't realize, but you still decided who deserved respect." The words hit harder than shouting ever could. Around the lobby, employees lowered their eyes, while several people who watched silently earlier now looked ashamed for not stepping in sooner. Harold remained calm through all of it. No anger, no revenge, just disappointment. And somehow that disappointment felt far heavier than rage. The atmosphere inside the corporate lobby had completely transformed now. Employees stood silently near the elevators, while whispers spread throughout the building faster than any official announcement ever could. The same old janitor people ignored every morning was suddenly being looked at with shock and respect from every direction. Victoria remained frozen near the cleaning cart, clearly struggling to process how quickly her public humiliation turned against her. One younger employee quietly whispered to another he was cleaning the floors himself, while an older receptionist shook her head slowly, and nobody even noticed him. Harold Bennett calmly rested one hand against the handle of the cleaning cart, while looking around the lobby filled with expensive suits and nervous faces. "Funny thing about uniforms," he said softly. "People think they reveal value." Several employees lowered their eyes immediately after hearing that. Victoria finally stepped forward slightly. "Mr. Bennett, I truly apologize for the misunderstanding." Harold looked at her calmly for several long seconds before answering. "You apologized after discovering I had power," he said quietly. "That's what should concern you." Silence spread again, because everyone understood exactly what he meant. If he had truly been just a janitor, the humiliation would have continued, and that truth made the entire building uncomfortable. Harold slowly looked around the lobby one more time, his eyes moving across the marble floors, luxury offices, giant company logos, and employees standing silently near the elevators. "When I started this company," he said calmly, "I cleaned these floors myself every night after work because we couldn't afford janitors." Several older executives nodded quietly,
remembering the early years of the corporation. Harold glanced toward the cleaning cart beside him. "So I kept doing it sometimes," he continued softly. "Not because I needed to, because it reminded me who we're supposed to be." The board members standing nearby looked visibly emotional now, while employees listened carefully from every corner of the lobby. Harold then looked directly at Victoria again. "Money creates comfort," he said quietly. "But character creates respect." Victoria lowered her eyes completely after hearing the sentence. The younger executives beside her looked equally embarrassed now, realizing they stayed silent while the founder of the company was publicly humiliated right in front of them. Harold slowly removed the cleaning gloves from his hands and placed them carefully onto the cart. "The most dangerous people in business," he said calmly, "are the ones who mistake status for superiority." Nobody in the lobby could argue with him anymore. The lobby remained completely silent as Harold Bennett slowly picked up the old cleaning towel from the cart one final time. Employees moved carefully out of his path now, while executives stood frozen near the elevators, watching the elderly founder calmly straighten his maintenance uniform. The same man people ignored every morning had just exposed the true culture of the entire company without ever raising his voice. Harold looked toward the younger employees gathered near reception before speaking one last time.
"Never disrespect someone because of the job they do," he said softly. "You have no idea what they sacrificed to build the world around you."
The words settled heavily through the marble lobby. Several employees looked visibly emotional now, while Victoria stood completely silent beside the cleaning cart, surrounded by the consequences of her own arrogance. Harold gave one final glance toward the building around him, the company he built from nothing decades earlier, before quietly turning toward the elevators. As the doors closed behind him, nobody in the lobby spoke, because every person standing there understood the same painful truth. The most important people in life are often the ones the world stops noticing first.